right, guys, Zack Barnard coming to you with Big Bad Bodybuilding. We were here in Las Vegas. We had coming fresh off the Mr. Olympia. We did the expo. It went great. We crowned a new Olympia champion last night. But we are here at Vegas Discount Nutrition on Grand Canyon Drive. Day after Supercell. Had a great turnout today. Nutrition Wolf was here. We did some samples. Dennis was shaking hands and kissing babies. So it was a good day. Gave a lot of free samples. We appreciate Vegas Discount Nutrition and all their locations for having us and allowing us to do this podcast. This is going to be something new for us. We're going to call it for now Supps Sit Down. I'd like to introduce Mr. Day Mitchell. He's going to be my co-host on this show. What this is going to be about supplements, guys, not just Nutrition Wolf, but all brands. We're going to talk about your questions, what's working, what's hot right now, what's worked in the past, what to avoid, and all that kind of stuff. So we're really going to focus more on that for you guys that want to, bring us your questions and learn more about, the supplements we take every day. Maybe you don't know all of the ingredients and what they do and what they're in there and for. So we're gonna touch on that. And today we're gonna have a special episode. We're going to kind of briefly touch on the last 30 years of the industry. That's kind of when I came in. I was, 16, 17 years old. I started working in a nutrition store. And that's really when it kind of took off, going back with EAS and things like that. So we're going to briefly talk about that. Day, I'm going to you to introduce yourself a little bit here first, and then we're going to introduce the perfect guest for this topic today.
The number one guest of the topic so far, right? Show number one for this, what we're doing. I'm Dave Mitchell. I've been in the industry for about 16 years now. I started as a 17 youngster, and I ran stores. We all do. We all run stores. We find our local sub shop. We go there. We want to learn. We want to soak it all in. I worked for free for a little while because I really wanted to learn the game. And over the last almost 20 years, I've really had a deep feel for formulation and learning ingredients and knowing what to put in, what not to put in, how to mix things, and then go from there in terms of the history of the game itself, what were guys doing yesteryear, this year, and the years to come. So this guy right here we got with us is the perfect guy to give us a little bit of a background on that. So let's get started.
Guys, I'd love to introduce world-renowned author, bodybuilder. I mean, we'll add to the list, gym owner, supplement brand owner, you name it, he's done it at a world-class level. Mr. Kris Gethin, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. So, Kris, I'll tell a little story. Probably some of this he won't even remember, but I was 17, 18 years old. I started a brand called Rock Hard Formulations. I set up, it was probably the Ronnie Coleman Classic. This young guy next to me, had a magazine called Cage Muscle. And he was doing the photos and everything. We got to talking, and just a great guy. And I loved him right off the bat. And, I kind of followed him. But from there, I mean, he went on to do great things, bodybuilding.com and, trainer of the world and, all this stuff. So, I followed your journey. I went up to compete one year. And, I mean, the guy had me over at his house and was like, fed me dinner. So just a great guy to know in the industry. He's done it all. He's in the biohacking now. He does all this stuff. He's going to have some great insight. So, Kris, I want to, introduce you and, take it back to at that time and what was big. When I think back of the 90s, I'm thinking, MRPs, EAS, fat burners, Ephedra was around. And, that was the big stuff that was going then. I mean, what do you remember about that era and really what's around today that's still from that area that we're taking and using today?
Yeah, so I was in Wales, during that time. So we were looking to the US and US magazines to what we should be taking. We didn't have the opportunity to engage with the athletes, obviously. We'd just look at the picture of the athlete and see the supplement next to him and think, it must be because of that supplement, and go ahead and get it. So, I remember buying the Cybergenics, and I don't know if you remember, they'd come with like a video.
Yeah, it was a kit, right?
Yeah. And there'd be a video in there as well, but that video wouldn't play on UK video players. So that's it. It's just a blank screen.
Wow.
And I remember, saving up and spending about £800, which would be about $1,000, all on MedRec supplements, thinking that it was going to change my life. And it didn't, because, it wasn't because the supplements just didn't work. I just didn't realize it's only like 3 to 5% of your overall gains, dependent on how much you need to depend on them. If you can only eat 3 times a day, maybe you're going to have 3 shakes a day, whatever. So I didn't really realize that back then. I learned the hard way. but then realized, okay, this is that 1% or 2% or 3%. I've really got to put in that 97% to get some sort of ROI out of it. But it was a great time, and I absolutely loved it because there was a lot of mystique around these bodybuilders. Like Dorian, they called him the Shadow. There's a lot of mystique there. You couldn't engage with these people. The only time that you could see them was at an appearance, or if you got to know them, or at a bodybuilding show. And it was just like being part of a cult and growing up in mid Wales on a farm, no one to really talk or engage with about that and have this feeling of belonging. You had that when you actually went to these events or went to the gym. And I loved that it was niche and it wasn't accessible. It was like, your favorite band growing up. It was like your band until they go mainstream and you kind of like forget about it and you move on to the next one. That's what bodybuilding definitely was for me then.
So you were in more of a smaller town, I would imagine, so of Wales, or what you would call it in terms of the area you were in. So when you came out and said, "I'm getting into bodybuilding," was it had people around the area really understood it, or was it you were one of the first guys really talking about it of your circle, and then you start looking for supplementation, you start looking for nutritional advices and things like this? There wasn't an internet to be type it in, order it, it's at your door. In terms of getting your hands on proper nutrition, getting your hands on proper supplementation, how difficult was it for you? I mean, you're on a farm, so you're getting good food. But in terms of access to gyms, access to supplementation, and just nutritional knowledge in general, what did you rely on?
Yeah, so it was difficult, I'd say, in respect of that I just didn't have money. I didn't have the financial resources to go out and buy supplements, really. So, it's when I started working out. So I competed in a lot of extreme sports like motocross, downhill mountain biking, and I got into bodybuilding through a way of physio. Is physiotherapy because my body was beaten up and I felt that I was able to now attach my identity to bodybuilding, and it was very therapeutic for me. But like you said, access to gyms is very difficult. The nearest small town had this college gym. Well, the college don't open until 8 o'clock, but I needed to get into the gym before then because I had to go and work on a building site. At that time, so I found a way of breaking in to this little window, and I'd climb in through the window and basically train in there with the lights off until I had to go to work. It was just my only way around it because there was nowhere else to go. Uh, I think there's one more gym in that town now. It's very very small.
Really progressed.
Huh?
They've really progressed.
Yeah. And when it came to supplementation, so I went to college then to study it because this is how I knew about bodybuilding. People as kids would buy comic books. I would buy bodybuilding magazines. They were my real life comic book heroes. It was just fascinating to me. And through that, I thought, I'm actually enjoying this and I'm enjoying the weight training. I'm alleviated from the pain that I've got from these extreme sports. I'm starting to feel better mentally because I was going through depression. This is something that I want to learn more about. And when I started reading more about it, I found that I was able to retain this content, which I hadn't in school. I failed at school. I hated school. I hated every single minute of it. So that's when I thought I'm going to go to college and I'm going to study this and maybe see what I can learn from it. And maybe because I got a passion, maybe I can make a living out of being a personal trainer. I knew that I had to get out of my social circle in Wales because I was getting too influenced by alcohol and drugs and just doing some stupid stuff, and that was my way of attaching myself. So I decided there's a magazine called Muscle News. It's like a newspaper. And I found there was a show in Wales in a place called Barry Island. Giles Thomas was the judge in this show. And I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this bodybuilding show. And that was a year and a half later after picking up my weight for the first time. And I competed in that show as a natural bodybuilder. I had no idea there's such a thing as enhanced and natural shows. So I'm going against enhanced bodybuilders, but I was definitely the smallest, but I got shredded because I went zero carbs for 8 weeks. I didn't know anything
That'll do
else,
it.
yeah. But I competed in that show and I got second place. And from then on, I was just addicted to it. And that's when I started doing the personal training, earn a little bit more money for me to afford the supplementation. Finally, I had a mentor by this guy called Daryl Aldis. He lived about 2 hours from me, but I would engage with him and he was sponsored by which was like Dorian Yates's previous brand with Kerry K's, called Chemical Nutrition Products. So CNP it was called.
So that was, I do remember that logo. It's a very basic logo back in the day.
Yeah.
The stuff looked very. It didn't look like supplements. I remember seeing those.
It was
logos.
called Dorian Yates approved after that.
Exactly that. So I remember seeing some of that back then and thinking like, I didn't know if it was supplements. It all came in boxes.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's
in
right.
Bags.
Yeah.
As an American, everything's a bottle. I remember seeing like, is it supplements? Is it books? You know, I didn't know what it was watching a video or seeing a magazine. I've never seen it in a store here. So that was a brand that you had access to very early during the heyday of that brand.
Yeah, it wasn't a cheap brand, but that bodybuilder, Dowell Aldous, his name was, he went on to win the British Championships in the middleweight category. He wanted chicken breast, good chicken breast. Now, I grew up on a farm, so I would just go over, kill a chicken, take the breasts off, give them to him, and in exchange, he would give me the Pro Mass, which was a mass gainer from CNP in a bucket, because I honestly thought that would be better for me than a chicken breast.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's when I started to really get that. And then there was another company called Viodex. Every now and again, they would have a special where you would buy your Viodex and you can buy another one for £1, which is like $1.
Okay.
So I would stock up on those and then sell the other one at full price. So then I could continue to afford my supplements. So that's how I really started going down the supplement route to fulfill my bodybuilding. And then after a while, worked on cruise liners with my qualifications, moved to Australia, and that's when I started attending natural bodybuilding shows and seeing what was attainable. Because there was a guy called Mark Costanti, he guest posed on one of the stages, and I was like, that is unbelievable. There's no way he's natural. He cannot be. And then I ended up becoming his training partner.
Oh, wow.
And realized, okay, there's levels to this shit. And that's why I decided to kind of go down that route, you know.
What year was that?
That was 2000. That was 2000.
Okay, 2000. So we're still kind of in the MRP, protein powder, probably creatine, was the big stuff still at that time.
Well, and now I've got exposed to the Australian market of supplements.
Okay, so a lot more stuff that was available.
Musashi, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Now I'm living in a city. I'm in Sydney.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot more available. A lot of brands I hadn't heard of because there's Australian brands.
Yeah, I'm very curious. Back then the industry there's a million supplements these days. Now there are brands, of course, but what are some of the main ingredients people were using, like the most? Of course, creatine, but I know that it's branched carbs started coming really popular in 90s time. A lot of maltodextrins and things like this. So it's the first time you had powder and carbohydrates. What were some of the things a lot of companies were using around the 90 to 95, 97 times, you think?
Yeah, where I was, there was a lot of mass gainers and meal replacements. Like you said, they had the boxes of the packets. They were convenience, their meal replacements, and the mass gainers were huge then. And I was one of those guys that had the farts all the time, consuming all these mass gainers, throwing in milk and blending it up. HMB was quite big back then. And, keep in mind, in Australia, a lot of supplements like Yahimbi, tryptophan, a lot of these ingredients are not available.
Still not allowed.
You can't get them. So there wasn't that much exposure, but you'd have kind of a lot of these creatine blends with sugars in there.
Which sometimes isn't the worst thing, but they didn't do that on purpose, right?
Yeah.
It was just the way to make it taste good or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So, that was, quite the popular, the HMB with the creatine, with all the sugars, to help. I think it was it the Nitrotech? That was that?
Yeah.
That was a protein.
Celtech.
Celtech.
That's it. Celtech.
I believe that MuscleTech built their brand off of that product.
Yeah, Celtech.
Everyone was taking Celtech.
Yeah, and Medrex had a version of that. I can't remember the name of that prior to them as well. Probably about 7 or 8 years prior to that.
I think at that time, it's follow the leader, right? MuscleTech comes out with, primarily most folks took it because it's creatine, it tastes great. Now the science behind it's going to be, sugar, glycogen, loading, yada, 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 but people are buying it because it tastes damn good. You're getting a solid.
It's Kool-Aid. It's Kool-Aid with
exactly
creatine.
it. So you follow the leader. Okay, this guy's making $1 million over here. Well, we have access to creatine and sugar too, so we're going to have one as well. And that's usually how the brand starts to see trends in the industry.
Yeah, and I remember MuscleTech hit it in a big way because I think it was Scott Welch that actually helped them. Actually, launch in all these countries like Brazil, India, UK, Australia, all at the same time. They'd done their homework and they took their time and then launched everywhere at the same time. So it was just a massive boom. And then obviously we're seeing the Johnny Jacksons, the Dexter, the Branch, like Jay Cutler, all sponsored by these brands, just going nuts.
Which that era, we start to see that era change from the 90s into the 2000s.
Yes.
Right. So you look at the 90s era, it was all about steroid replacement, right? The Cybergenics and all these other brands.
When we start having the Andros come out for a little bit.
Exactly this. And you're actually seeing those inside of GNCs.
Yeah, for a while.
And a lot of supplement companies, were kind of throwing it in there, right? No one really knowing the repercussions of putting Andros and other pro hormones in their pre-workouts, because GNCs and vitamin shops, which is where most folks had access to these supplements, and of course they work better. They had real stuff inside.
Yeah. Man, you could get GHB at GNC for a while, right?
The landscape was so much more Wild West at the time, but it was almost a regulated Wild West. It wasn't just like your independent shops. It was global and national stores selling true anabolics to a sense. And then in the 2000s, which we get into that time now, you mentioned the Johnny Jacksons, the Branch Warrens. I know we all remember the hardcore scene of supplements, right? We always had eras of subs. In the 90s, it was experimental. It's ephedrins, it's stimulants, it's things like this. In the 2000s, what are your remembers of like 2000 to 2010, the hardcore scene of subs? What brands kind of stood out to you that kind of led that charge?
I'd say Gaspari, with the Halodrol. Was it Halodrol 50 or something like that?
Dude, I tell you what, I was playing college baseball at the time, NAIA, but I was on that stuff. I was about 240. And I'm natural. I'm taking, Halodrol. I mean, that stuff was legit. It was real stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody, I was hitting home runs like every other game. So that stuff worked. Yeah, Gaspari's brand. Now, remind me, I want you to continue, Kris, was the Explode and Cell Mass, was that early 2000s when that really took off?
Yeah, that'd be like 2002 to 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And I remember coming to the Mr. Olympia either in 2000 or 2001, coming from Australia at that time. And there was, they'd give away loads of stuff back then. People would go back to their hotel room and then just dump everything on the spare bed and it'd fill up the spare bed.
Halloween.
I would take an extra suitcase to put it in and then fly back home.
Yeah, and you felt so proud to have all this free shit. Yeah. And I just remember picking up a lot of this stuff. And because I'm competing in natural shows, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to look at all the ingredients.
Watch it, yeah.
They're all bloody pro hormones. Yeah. Like, you put this spray under your tongue. I can't remember these brands, but so much was pro hormones back then. And they were just giving them away at the shows. And I'm wondering how many people actually took them, didn't know what they were taking, and totally screwed themselves up there for a while.
Well, testing wasn't as prominent as it is now in athletics, thank goodness, or everybody would have been getting popped and it would have happened sooner. But yeah, there was a lot of, like you said, man, it was just wild, like just whatever,
A lot of sports organizations didn't understand that a dietary supplement could have real anabolics inside. After all the regulations that happened in 1990 with the Anabolic Control Act, all these guys were going to these colleges and jumping the fence and going and looking at the nomenclature of things that weren't technically illegal. So it's not illegal. My supplements aren't regulated to a degree. No one's going to come and just test all my stuff for true anabolics. So they were dumping in your super draws, halodrols, anastrozole. Gaspari had a Arimidex.
Yeah, that's right.
They used the name on the box. And no sport organization would think that anything at GNC could actually be real. And that's where a lot of these guys made a killing, but also put a lot of guys at risk during that time.
Yeah. And so that is the standout. That brand is the standout because you look at the magazines and, of course, it was kind of hardcore. Rich Gaspari would use the pictures of him just covered in veins.
The most muscular. I know the exact picture you're talking about.
And then I can't remember the female's name. I knew her, long blonde hair, and she had that picture of the box just covering her private.
Marketing was intense. We talk about hardcore. We're affiliated with Dennis Wolf, and I remember as a youngster seeing the magazine and the hardcore underground. You see Dennis Wolf in like a dungeon somewhere working out. Him and Zack, and the whole industry was so wrapped around. I want to say the Metroflex mystique, right? The Branch Warrens and Johnny Jacksons. If you weren't working out in a dump, with all the stuff broken, you weren't really working out. And you being from Wales, and you went to different places and whatnot. Did that translate overseas at all? The hardcore mentality to where people over there in that area thought they had to work out in a shack to actually get gains?
I don't know if they thought that way. They just did it that way. You know, everything, all the gyms were independent.
Well, and Dorian at Temple, I mean, that was
You just thought you
the
had-
starter. Yeah.
I just think of like guys who thought they had, because I was that kid. You know, I had a 24-hour fitness membership. But I started reading magazines and said, I need to go to the place down the street with no AC. That's how I get gains, because I'm not getting any gains here with this air conditioning and swimming pool. And I wonder if the kids around the time in other countries were feeling that sentiment. But you said there's more independence, which are going to be that way inherently because of finances.
Yeah, and I think there's just definitely more of a hardcore gym culture, I'd say, overall in the UK, especially back then. You know, like I said, a lot of these independent gyms and a lot of the equipment, you know, you would pinch your thighs every time you grab the dumbbells because they'd be kind of loose, and it's just how it was. And you know, like Neil, who lives here now, Neil Hill, like his gym was called the Dungeon, very underground, not even toilets there. You'd have to go and have a piss in the car park if you want to go to the toilet. It's just how it was. Those gyms still do exist, quite a few of them. Peak Physique in Cardiff, huge but independent, you know, and Simon Fan, who owns Ultimate Fitness here. There's a lot of those gyms that still exist, but that was the culture, and everyone. It was just always the same. Where I noticed when I came over to the US in '97 and '99 for the first times, and I saw people like wearing tank tops. It wasn't like that in the UK or maybe in other places of Europe. I don't know, but in the UK, everyone's always covered up. All the bodybuilders always covered up, and it's kind of similar. Like you see Lewis Breed, you know, he's always covered up, big baggy top. That's kind of the British mentality. It's not for show at all. It's just for grind, and that's kind of what I like about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of black and white.
I have a question about that. Do you feel that style, because that's not really as in these days, you know, but with the current fitness industry, it's very, you know, what are you wearing? What are you wearing in the gym, right? 'Cause that's what the kids are into. You know, by kids I mean just people young at heart. They want to be a part of the gym culture. Do you feel the hardcore culture as it molded into more of the, you know, matching gym tops, men and women doing the same, got to have the right fit? How do you feel that's kind of translated into the industry, good or bad? Are you a purist? Do you like the new style with more of a cultural? Everyone's kind of liking the, now they're focused more on, instead of going out wear, it's gym wear, right? Do you feel it's a good thing for the industry, or are you still a purist at heart? You prefer more of the hardcore aesthetic?
I don't know if it's good for the industry or not, but for me personally, I like the purest, you know, just the hardcore aspect of it. You know, I look at people wearing Gymshark. I'm like, that's another soy boy. You know? But I like, you know, like the more gasp, like the hardcore, the grind. You look at Sean Clarita, you know, all covered up, baggy, just driving hard. And you know he's there for therapy. He's there just for the grind. And whatever he is putting in, he's definitely getting out. Where a lot of people, as you know, you go to gyms today, and I sound like an old man every time I bloody say this. People are posing in front of the mirror, they're wearing their tight tanks and whatnot. It's like, geez, do it at home.
Yeah.
You're here to work out. You know, don't get in my way, don't distract me. I'm not being an asshole by any means. I'm not an asshole, I swear. But I feel that kind of like hardcore aspect of it has gone away. And I think a lot of it is because we're like children. We get influenced by observation, and what people are observing now on Instagram are what they're taking to the gym now, you know, and it's all about the success, not prioritizing a sacrifice to get that success. And I love the sacrifice, and that's where I wish people would push themselves a little more.
I wish the same thing, of course.
Ben, I want to shift a little bit of gears, stay on the supplement topic, but Kris, talk a little bit about your time at bodybuilding.com and your role there. And is that not why you moved to Boise?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're still there. So are you still involved with them? And I, you know, I know at one point, and correct me if I'm wrong, they were probably the biggest mover of product,
By far.
at least in the country, if not the world, because
The world, no one was close.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, where is that? You know, at what time was the heyday of that? Were you a part of that? And what was the biggest big seller and big mover that just blew that thing up?
So prior to me moving to Boise, I was living in LA. I was working for Weeder for a few years there for Muscle and Fitness and
That more of the
magazine.
magazines, yeah.
Yeah, for the magazines. And I loved it, traveling to all the shows, covering the events with Sean Perrine, rest in peace, Peter McGough, rest in peace, Greg Merritt. It was just a great time. And I lived in Venice, California. So I'm living a dream. So, when I was in Wales, I'd be, going through the magazine. I'd go to my local news agents like 3 weeks before the magazine would come in and say, is it in yet? Is it in yet? I just totally annoy them. And then I'd read it from front to back. And the people who I really aspired to the most was Mike O'Hearn and Tito Raymond. I love those physiques. So now I'm in Venice training next to them. I'm like,
they're there. They've been there since the start.
Yeah, I'm living the dream, man. Absolutely loved it. And so I'm working for those guys. But then I started my own magazine, Cage, and I started doing some freelancing for bodybuilder.com. This is probably around 2006. I started doing freelancing, and it was a very, very small company at that time. Bob Pick had just come on as an athlete, and they didn't have any other athletes. So then, I was doing photography, I was doing editing, I was doing writing. So then bodybuilder.com didn't have an editor in chief. So they asked me, because I was doing freelancing, I got to know Russ and Ryan, and they asked me to fly up there to interview for the job. I got the job, which I was like so relieved, because I didn't like LA too much, not for a long term. I don't mind visiting. So moving to Boise was great, and there was about 30 of us in the office and the warehouse. The warehouse and the office was all one there. Yeah. And it grew basically to like 500 people in the next 3 years.
Oh my goodness!
It was insane. I didn't know anybody by name.
And so, is that people he's bringing in, or those like locals just getting the job?
No, a lot of people actually still live in Boise now.
It's great. I've been there twice, competed there twice. That one time I had dinner at your house and did the little natural bodybuilding shows. I love Boise, man. It's an awesome place.
Yeah, it's great. I absolutely love it. And so a lot of people have moved there, and of course, bodybuilder.com is not there anymore, but they stuck around. Yeah, it's become very fragmented now. The CEO of bodybuilder.com now, she came from Vitamin Shop. She is living in Austin. So people are like working remotely everywhere now. Yeah. When Ryan sold, he sold to like Liberty Media, and they didn't really understand bodybuilding or providing the value that the customer really wanted, and giving them a lot of free content and not really screwing the vendors. So things changed really, really quick. I left at the time that Ryan left, basically. Not because I really wanted to, but I got kicked out of the country. And my lawyer hadn't extended for my visa.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah, this is at the end of 2010. And I had to come down here to cover the Olympia because I literally got a week's notice. But anyway, bodybuilder.com at that time was by far the number one. We'd have 250,000 unique visitors to the site every single day.
Wow.
And they had like several warehouses around the country, warehouses in Europe. It was just unbelievable.
And you were just, putting out, I just remember reading article after article that you put up. Now, were all those kind of tied to promote, the supplements and all that? I mean, obviously that's part of it, right? But you just put out so much content, and I don't really remember it necessarily being tied to any specific product. So were more people going there for the information, or both? And then obviously you just hit them with the ads or whatever, or were they going there to buy a product? It was just hand in hand, right?
We never really marketed the store. We marketed the content.
And that's what sold.
The content would lead to the unbiased decision to buy the supplement. We never pushed, like if I had articles, I'd get articles submitted every week. We had hundreds of writers. And I would have to go through all of these to ensure.
Yeah, because anybody can kind of submit something, right? But then you're the guy that approved if it goes on there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Awesome. And sometimes people submit so much content. I'm like, okay, now we'll build you a profile and have you as a writer on the site. But I was working closely with like Muscle Tech, all these brands, and I would always have to say, look, you're selling a product here. Do not give me this content if you're selling a product. Give me the education. And then we will link your products that you may mention to the store and let the unbiased decision of the consumer make that decision.
That's what I always wondered as a consumer, right? At the time when you were writing these, I always wondered the pressure of the writer, the journalist itself, when it came down to, we all have to make $1, right? And when you're selling a product, I always wondered the pressure of Big Brother in the back saying, hey, I'll give you a couple extra bucks if you tag my product and this, and this. So journalistic integrity is always at risk when you're reading these publications, especially almost a free publication free, right? You're not buying the magazine knowing it's full of ads. Going to a bodybuilding.com, a lot of people don't really understand that there's a lot of money that goes into a website because we're standard consumers. So when reading an article and then it's peppering in HMB, 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 and then at the bottom, such and such, HMB, the pressure of a journalist for integrity. I know obviously your work was stellar, but did you see any of that in your time with maybe other journalists out there who were writing articles and maybe they were feeling the pressure from supplement companies in the background?
Yeah, for sure. And it was my job to kind of filter it out. I wouldn't ask them if they'd been approached by any means, but you could see it was in there. And I actually got approached. Like when I published a book in 2010 called Body by Design, and that was in partnership with bodybuilder.com because I was talking about body space and how the accountability and the transparency is the tipping point for transformation. I got approached by, I think, two companies to actually highlight their products in that book. And of course they're going to pay me handsomely, but obviously that wasn't really my purpose. My purpose was to work for bodybuilding.com and put out the content. But yeah, it happened, and I'm sure it happened a lot more than I was aware of.
I kind of to piggyback on that a little bit, we're thinking of journalistic integrity, and we're also talking supplement culture, but fitness culture in general. Bodybuilding.com to me, being even though it's a web publication at the time, the magazines were still in force. They were still moving. The culture around bodybuilding and fitness at the time, and maybe we all feel this kind of way, it was very cultural in terms of everyone was kind of seeing the same thing. You being editor in chief and actually having to approve the content going out, same thing for the magazines. So if a magazine came out Friday or whenever it may be, Saturday you go to the gym and everyone's doing the arm blast workout for the week. Everyone's buying the same product that was advertised at the time and approved. And nowadays it's everyone for everyone. Everyone has their own little thing. How do you feel that time of the industry when we were all kind of on the same wavelength versus now everyone's doing their own thing? What do you prefer?
I like to keep an open mind, to be honest with you, because as we all get a little bit older, maybe we have to change things ourselves. We have to navigate and do things differently as we did, like, from 20, 30 years ago. I think it's okay, as long as people aren't getting influenced by the wrong content out there. Like I said, you'll see someone like Bradley Martin, do a 500-pound deadlift on a skateboard or whatever, and it influences people to do these stupid things and do it now. And I've only started training maybe 6 months ago, and next thing they're getting injured. Exactly what happened to you, and you got inspired by someone on Instagram, I bet.
Yeah, now it's jumping off skyscrapers, man. These stunt guys out here, yeah, not for me.
Yeah, so I guess things have changed. Now we have Spartan races, we have CrossFit, so everyone's found their niche. MMA is huge now. It was cage fighting back then. Now it's MMA and UFC. So everybody's got a different thing, but everybody comes together and they have this, I guess, it's kind of like a unique brotherhood. Some frown upon others. I get that. It'd always be that way. It's an egotistical thing. But yeah, it just is what it is. I let it fall where it may lie. I'm not really too bothered by it.
Let's fast forward to now and talking about the industry in the stores. We're here at Vegas Discount, and obviously everything's so much more accessible today, especially with Amazon and the pricing and everything. And you can literally get stuff delivered to your house the same day. Why are these stores still important? And I mean, I think a lot of it's definitely significantly shrunk, right? The size of these stores. You're about to open another store, manage the store for 15 years. Guys, just talk about, like, and I miss this. And my first job, I worked for a gentleman when I was 17 and sold products in a store. Just how important is it? They can go in. Now, obviously, you have to be educated, but it's so much. It's personable when you can go in and talk to somebody about the products that knows what they're talking about versus buying something online. I mean, we got to get back to that. I just think that's so important. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, is that when you went and started in the supplement, Kris? I mean, in the business, I mean, and went in and bought your first supplements, did you have that person to talk to like guide you, on what to get? And I mean, how important is that, especially with these younger kids?
No, I didn't have that available to me. Living in rural Wales, it was nowhere close. So I had to purchase online. Like I said, purchase from the magazine, basically,
Right.
because I'd see that picture, see the product, see the transformation, and that's going to work for me. I think it's very important to have this. Much like, I like a tangible book or a tangible magazine. I like to touch, feel. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit older. But to come in, most of the newbies out there have no idea what they're looking at. Maybe they have gut dysbiosis, so they don't know what's going to be bad for them, what's going to be good for them. So I think if you're coming into a store like this where you have educational staff or educated staff to actually give you the right suggestions for you, as long as they're not working on spiffs like they do in some
Well, and that's part of it.
chains.
That's
Yeah.
part of it. So yeah, you kind of have to self-educate yourself a little bit, but do they know the ingredients? Do they know what it's supposed to do?
Exactly that. So, and not to, we're in Vegas discount here, which they sell lots of, from the big brand to the smaller brand, the guy just getting started, more of the hardcore brand, or to the big national brand. But we look at, like, say, the competitor, the GNCs. I had a friend be a manager at GNC, and the last thing I learned their training, the last thing they want is product knowledge. They actually don't want you to be too knowledgeable, because you're going to probably steer it away from who's making money that month. And that's an issue when it comes down to dietary supplements. When someone's coming off the street, they're just getting started. We're in the golden age of information, but it's also the age of contradiction. So we're getting to the point to where if someone tells me the sky is blue, well, I know the sky is blue, but if a video comes out and says the sky is green, it's going to get more views. And all you got to do is just talk with the proper dialect, and all of a sudden, oh, the sky is green. Let's go to the convention, right? And the same thing happens in our industry. Now, if you go see a guy at the supplement shop, you can hold him accountable for his word, and you can go talk to him about that product that you bought. If I'm buying a supplement from Joe Supps on YouTube, I just ordered it. I cannot go talk to Joe. He's not going to talk back to me. Your local place, whether it be all you got is a GNC, hopefully the guy there working's honest. But your local independent stores, or even independent larger chains, are going to be able to put the right product in your hand, and more real brands go there. Guys like yourself who really know what they're doing. Last thing you want your product to do is poured out by uneducated people. You want it to be in educated places. And you can only reach so much, because not everyone probably sees all of your content, right? There's so many eyes out there taking supplements, but they might not all be able to view your content. So stores like these, and just nutrition stores in general, really serve a purpose that I think a lot of people are looking for again. And you kind of see it coming back. I was in the industry for years. I left the stores that I was with, and I'm actually going back into the store industry because of the outreach that I got when I left. I was done with it, burnt out. 3 months later, I'm getting calls. Hey, I can't go anywhere else, man. Where are you? I need you here. They'll drive an hour to come and see someone with proper information. They'll pass 1,000 stores, pass the internet, but they'll go to their guy. And that needs to kind of come back to the industry, and I think we're seeing it.
Well, I think a lot of it is brand confidence and trust as well. Obviously, if you don't have an educated person, you can at least do your research on the brand and who's behind that. And I mean, you got no better person right here. Now, Kris, tell us a little about, your brief history. I know we're going to wrap it up pretty quick, but just Caged, Muscle, how successful it was. I know you pride yourself on the quality of the ingredients, the testing of the ingredients, just your run with that. And now your new venture with Unmatched, your partner there, and what you have in store for that brand.
Yeah, for sure. So I started Caged in 2014 because obviously working at bodybuilder.com, working at Reader Publications. Prior to that, there was a lot of ingredients that I was kind of mixing myself, but I'm actually doing these video series at the same time, these video trainers. So I knew that not everyone is going to go and buy single raws and put them together. I wanted something a little bit more convenient. So that's why I started Cage, because I didn't see all those ingredients that I wanted in a product that I actually thought worked for me. So that's why I launched with my the previous COO of bodybuilder.com and the formulator of the bodybuilder.com's supplement. So, we'd all left at that time. So figured we'd start something together. And it was great. It worked really well for that time because nobody was using like fermented ingredients or a lot of trademark efficacious dosages. Now a lot of people are doing it now. But towards the end, I had a lot of sleepless nights for a good couple of years because my business partners just wanted to take the supplement brand in a different direction. They wanted to go more mainstream. And I wasn't really prepared to make any changes to the brand in order to facilitate the mainstream shelves.
Right.
So that's when I decided to kind of voluntary step back, walk away, and say, good luck, guys. I'm going to do something that does fulfill my need for a niche. And I like the niche. You know, I don't want to be a Me Too brand. I will put out something that's going to be a little bit more expensive because it's going to lend itself to the quality of the actual product that I feel comfortable taking, because it's very important for me to prioritize my health span, my longevity, and my performance. But I'm not going to sacrifice the health and fitness industry that supplements are supposed to be part of, which are healthy. So that's why I decided I wanted to start Unmatched. And, I took a long time to think about it and then a long time to formulate it once I'd had some conversations with Doug Miller and decided this is the guy that I want to go into partnership with, because we both come from natural bodybuilding backgrounds. And I wanted to have something that kind of facilitated that. But I knew Doug was a really good guy. And, it's very important for me that there's a great dynamic within the business, and we have a great dynamic. We're all really enjoying what we're doing. We're having a lot of fun. And having something that is kind of naturally sweetened, I was very apprehensive to how the sports performance market would embrace it. And they've really embraced it. And I think Jocko kind of led the way there to a certain degree by having these natural sweetened products. And he had a segue for us, so we've been able to slipstream in there very well.
And it's definitely trending in that direction. I mean, obviously, there's still the hardcore guys. You know, you kind of have to. You got the young kids that just want to get blasted out of their mind, the strongest they can get. But people that really know, and the older crowd, and even a lot of the younger ones, are looking for that health aspect. So that's, I think, bigger now than it was 10 years ago, where as long as it tastes good, I don't care, And now they're really looking at stuff like that, and the artificial coloring and things like that. They're important to a lot more people, now. And now with Doug Miller, now I followed him. I know he's a great, natural champion. Is he still competing, or
No.
What is his tie with the supplement industry? Did he really not have one until he got with you, or did he already have a brand as well?
Yeah, so he owns 4 other brands.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
He owns Core Nutritional.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with that.
He owns Merca Labs. He owns MyoBlocks, and he is the co-founder of Arms Race with Julian Smith as well.
This guy's really out
Okay,
there. We know
so
this guy.
I didn't do my
Yeah,
homework.
we know this
so
guy.
all right.
We're here with Gethin.
He owns gyms. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies,
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable person, and he can't sit still. But as far as competing is concerned, no, we probably won't compete again. The last time he competed was down at Jay Cutler's Classic here. He came in as a natural, obviously, and just blew everyone away.
His conditioning. I don't know if you've seen pictures of this. Now, what was the organization where he was really?
That was NPC.
Well, no,
as a natural. I can't remember.
But I mean, he just blew everybody away there.
It wasn't even close.
Yeah,
that's why everyone calls him Drug Miller.
Yeah,
and that actually brings up a little bit for me here. So we've been using the word natural a lot here, and I'm very curious in terms of the brand itself. You're promoting the healthier lifestyle, promoting this, but is the brand still attractive for more of, let's say, the more hardcore bodybuilder, a person who maybe doesn't really not say care about the natural aspect, but at the same time, sometimes when you're using tag words like this, it may steer somebody away saying that might not be for me.
It's definitely, like, it may sound like I'm selling snake oil here, because I'm going to say, it's for everyone, but it truly is. The only different aspect to this, because, I want it to be a sports performance line. I want you to perform. I am going to have some longevity ingredients in there. Like, for instance, in my EAAs, I've got glutathione, I've got spermidine in there. They're fermented amino acids, naturally sweetened, blah, blah, blah. There's some longevity aspects of it. But when you look at our pre-workout, for instance, you've got all the efficacious dosages of certain ingredients, from a nootropic aspect, from the blood flow aspect, from the the buffering of the lactic acid. The major differences that we have is, like, we don't have caffeine in any of our pre-workouts.
Really? That's unique. That's very unique.
Yeah, I don't know if you know Sean Wells from the supplement industry. He's known as the world's leading formulator. He's formulated products for Muscle Tech, for Dymatize. Like, he actually creates and patented ingredients. Paraxanthine is one of them. So paraxanthine is a metabolite of caffeine that gives you, like, this euphoric effect. It has all the benefits of caffeine, but it has none of the negatives. It won't increase your cortisol levels. If you're a slow caffeine metabolizer, you're fine, because it's out of your system within about 2 to 3 hours. It's got a very short half-life. It doesn't have the diuretic effect, blah, blah, blah. You can check your HRV. It doesn't have any negative effects. So that is a little bit different. But we saw some of our ingredients from overseas that is not available on the American market. So in that pre-workout, we also have creatine, which is creatine with guanidinoacidic acid, GAA. So that helps with BDNF. It helps crosses the blood-brain barrier more efficiently, much more neuroprotective than creatine monohydrate, and it gets absorbed into the cell through 4 different pathways instead of the one. So it has much higher bioavailability. If you have some people that are non-responders, they will be a responder to this. So our focus is still full on performance, but I want the longevity aspect because the majority of my travel is going speaking at biohacking and anti-aging conferences. I was in Miami last week. I'm going to be in Dubai as of Tuesday. I fly to Dubai to speak at these events. So it's very important that I test my biological age and supplements that do support that. But I'm always going to be a bodybuilder at heart. Doug Miller is always going to be a bodybuilder at heart. And we freaking train hard. Like those are intense workouts. Yeah, but I just love the mental aspect. The darker I go into places in the gym, the better I feel after. So I'm always going to train intense. So the supplements have to support that.
You mentioned biohacking, and that's a hot topic these days. Now it's been a hot topic for a while, but you're really starting to see it in mainstream media. We're seeing it a lot in publication, and I'm wondering about biohacking for maybe a layman. We're talking natural, a lot of stuff, but well, does biohacking in terms of these conferences that you deal with, do they also deal with the pharmaceutical side of biohacking? Is this a big part of it, or do you primarily prescribe to the natural side of biohacking?
Yeah, it's mostly the natural side of biohacking. There will be a combination of today's technology, whether it be the stem cells we spoke about earlier, hyperbaric oxygen machines, PEMF, etc. But then you have the ancestral tenets of meditation, grounding, getting the sunlight in the morning. So you try to combine both of these things. But the medical or pharmaceutical side aspect does come into it to a certain degree. Rapamycin has been shown to help with lifespan. Metformin been shown with blood sugar glucose control. So a lot of people in the biohacking space will resort to that as well. My job when I go to a lot of these events is get them to move, because a lot of people think that they can buy their longevity. They've got a lot of disposable income at these events, and they want to buy the red light, they want to buy the sauna, the ice bath. And I ask them, what's your training regime? What's your nutrition supplementation? It doesn't really exist. That's why I like to go to these events. Very different to what I'd be speaking at, like an event like this. It's like they're moving, but maybe they're not incorporating the longevity aspect. So I try to bridge that gap.
And you mentioned those. Where does hormone supplementation normally play with biohacking? You mentioned some of these other that do have hormone aspects, but for the good old fashioned bodybuilder, how does things like testosterones and things like this, are they able to incorporate in a safe manner in a typical testosterone replacement dose from your doctor? Are they able to incorporate something like this in biohacking, or is that kind of something we move away from to try to get it from a different source?
Well, we always try to go to the natural sources first. So are they consuming food or drink through plastics? Are they cooking on a Teflon pan? Are they consuming food that are factory farm, or is it grass fed, humane raised, blah, blah, blah? Are they going to bed early, etc.? So, a lot of these things that people do are absorbing endocrine disruptors. Bodybuilders are consuming twice the amount of the normal consumer. So we are potentially doing twice the amount of damage. So we have to look at the food sources that we're consuming. Even like, what sort of laundry detergents are you using? Because as you start getting hot in the vagus air, your pores are going to open and it's going to start absorbing that. Same with your personal hygiene. Even the lacquers and the paints and all the cleaning produce, in your home, all of these can be endocrine disruptors that is going to increase your estrogen, decrease your testosterone. So, and even this artificial light, this flicker is raising my cortisol when I look up at it. So, you have to wear like the blue light blocking glasses if the ceilings are low, or if you're in a gym and you're on the bench and you're facing up. So
Turn the lights off.
Yeah. You could do that. But all of these things can lower your testosterone levels. So what I usually do with clients is get them to incorporate, and this is just the icing, incorporate a lot of these things first and see if that is You know, anything can be helped, and all the biohackers do this. But if they're still like libido-less because they're a vegan or whatever it may be, then we start incorporating possibly TRT.
That was my primary one. I hear about biohacking, but I never get to sit down with someone who is probably an expert in the subject itself. You can read and read and read, but this right here, like we were talking about supplements earlier, getting down to speak to a person, see how passionate they are about it, they're able to give me a bit more in terms of what I can just read in black and white. So that's why probably attending these conferences is very, very important for someone looking to get into that realm. And you're talking about that. Does that realm fit with competitive bodybuilding? Can a person who is a competitive bodybuilder taking all the good supplements, right, in that area doing lots of damage to their body, are they able to simultaneously compete in bodybuilding at a high level and do biohacking and raise longevity for themselves? Is there a combination for this?
I think every bodybuilder should be doing it. I think a lot of bodybuilders would spend more time in their career as opposed to exiting early if they incorporated a lot of biohacks. Because at the end of the day, we are causing a lot of inflammation, a lot of reactive oxygen species, and maybe not enough antioxidants. You know, maybe we're not having enough glutathione or hydrogen or et cetera, et cetera. Maybe we're not grounding ourselves because we think it's woo woo. But in today's environment, because we have so much Wi Fi, non native EMF, satellite signals, radiation, X rays at the airport, we're absorbing all of this and not allowing it to pass through us by grounding earthing. Like if I hold an EMF reader and have this phone in my hand, that reading will go all the way up. But if I take my shoes and socks off and ground myself and do that, it goes all the way down because now it's allowing itself to be passed through me instead of into me. These shoes that I'm wearing, they're earthing shoes. I don't generally incorporate so many biohacks when I'm home because I'm on the outskirts of Boise. It's not that populated, but when I'm in Vegas, when I'm in Mumbai, when I'm in London or Dubai, then I will incorporate a lot of more of these biohacks because I'll measure my HRV on this ring. I'll measure my cortisol levels. So based on where I am is going to be dependent on how much I rely on biohacks because I'm going to try to do everything as natural as possible. But if I can, that will help. But all that inflammation, like I'm 50 years old now, and I've had a lot of injuries over the past, but I feel great. My biological age is 20, in my 20s, 26 years old. And my job is to try to bring it down. So I always say, age only matters on your driver's license. Chronologically, it means nothing. It's your biological age that means everything. And I feel that a lot of bodybuilders are accelerating biologically. And they should reverse that. And their bodies would be so much fresher. They would recover better, and obviously they'd perform better.
That brings something. Do you feel that the use of anabolics actually increases age? Does it actually speed up the aging process? I'm under the impression in my mindset that if I'm recovering in the gym faster from taking anabolics, that means I'm skipping some days. Do you feel that the use of anabolics itself, maybe that's how you convert some of these guys over to this mindset, is hey, you're speeding up your lifespan when you're cutting back days of recovery. Maybe in the same sense, anabolics will also increase your just overall age just in the use of them.
Yeah, that's a very open-ended question because we know there's a plethora of different anabolics out there. If we're talking about testosterone at decent levels, then I'm sure that's absolutely fine, dependent on how low your testosterone levels are. But when you're combining a lot of these, especially with the abuse and not the use, yeah, of course, it's going to accelerate your aging. There's no doubt about it, you know. But I think, you know, as you know, you speak to a lot of the pro bodybuilders, they take a very, very little amount compared to the people trying to get like the pro bodybuilders. And that's where the abuse comes and that's where the acceleration of aging comes.
That's a lot of information to take in right there. Man, so I definitely want to get deeper into this biohacking. When we have that episode, we'll have to have Kris back on for sure. Want to get into like the peptides and things like that. And man, I mean that's going to be a whole show in and of itself. But again, I know you got to catch a plane. We're all kind of leaving Vegas soon. But hey, great Olympia weekend. How was Unmatched at the expo? Did you guys, was it a success?
Yeah, it was,
Talk about your tattoo real quick, and how many tattoos did we actually give out?
How many tattoos do we do? Like 20, something like that? Pardon? 16. Okay, yeah, 16 tattoos. So everybody who came by the booth, we had a tattooist from Vegas who actually tattooed me. And if they had Unmatched tattooed, we'd give them a free year's worth of pre-workout.
All right.
And it was packed. There was the only time that was available was at the end when we were packing up yesterday. So my wife got tattooed.
No, she didn't. Really? With the Unmatched or something else?
She didn't go Unmatched.
Oh, wow.
No, she didn't go Unmatched.
I remember.
But we'd already paid for the tattooers, so why not? You know.
I would remember seeing that live, and when you came on, I was talking to Dennis, and I was like, dude, nobody's gonna get a tattoo. I was like, I don't think that's gonna. And dude, you proved me wrong. I went by the booth, and it was like lined up to get tattoos.
Yeah,
so.
we've even got people that have booked in for next year. Would you believe it? Because they couldn't get in.
Well, so make sure you give it to
Can I
him.
book it for next year? It's like we haven't even thought that far ahead.
Yeah, well, make sure you get him for free then next year because he's getting he's getting a lot of publicity out of that. But
he paid his rent.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, good luck with Unmatched. Definitely anxious. We're in Vegas. I'm sure you guys will be in here before long. Nutrition Wolf just got in ourselves on an end cap, so we'll see how that goes. Dennis does live here in Vegas, so we're going to be doing hopefully a lot of things here with the store and things like that. But I know you're headed off to Dubai soon. You're going back to Boise first.
Going back to Boise today, and then we're going to be unpacking and packing tomorrow, and then heading off to Dubai first thing in the morning on Tuesday.
Well, I'm ready to go home and be with the family for a little bit, man. It's been a long week for us, but thank you for making time to be here. First episode ever of Supps Sit Down. I'm excited to have Dave. Thank you for doing this with me, and we had the perfect first guest.
Yeah,
so
thank you, and hopefully we get the man back here pretty soon.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Any excuse to be back.
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Have a safe trip, and thank you, Vegas Discount Nutrition. This is Zack Barnard with Big Bad Bodybuilding. We will see you next time. Unmatched, where can we get the supplements right now? I'm sure the website's up.
Yeah, the website's up. You can go to unmatchedsupps.com, and we're at I shouldn't mention where else, a retail store.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, whatever you need to do, man.
Okay, Vitamin Shop. You can get them in Vitamin Shop. We're going to be in Gold soon, and hopefully we're going to be here as well at Vegas Discount.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll make it happen, man. So we'll put in a word for you.